Hey guys, today's lost sector is K1 crew quarters on the moon. There's going to be 2 overloads and 3 barriers. Looking at the build guide, we're going to be using Crown of Tempest, but you could also use Fallen Sunstar. Getting into the actual build, we're going to be using Healing Rift with Chain Lightning since it jolts targets, and Storm Grenades. Electrostatic Mine is going to be our first aspect. Defeating a target with arc abilities or defeating jolted or blinded targets creates an Ionic Trace. And we're going to be using Arc Soul so that when we pop a Rift, we get a little bit of extra DPS. This Arc Soul is also really good at taking out the exploding shanks in the lost sector. For the first fragment, we're going to be using Spark of Beacons. While you're amplified, your Arc Special Weapon Final Blows create a blinding explosion. Spark of Shock, Arc Grenades jolt targets. Spark of Discharge, Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to create an Ionic Trace. And Spark of Feedback, taking melee damage increases our outgoing melee damage. For weapons, we're going to be using an auto rifle for the barriers. I'm using Salvager Salvo, but you can use whatever you want in this slot. I would suggest the Salvo since it has Demolitionist to help us get our grenades back quicker, and it's just generally good at taking out the adds. And then Leviathan's Breath for the boss damage as well as champion damage. Moving on to the artifact, we're going to be using, obviously, Anti-Barrier Auto Rifle with Elemental Orbs Arc. If you don't have Elemental Orbs Arc, it's not going to make a big deal. It doesn't really change the gameplay too much. Moving on to the mods, obviously we're using Crown of Tempest. Ashes to assets so that when we get a grenade kill, we get a little bit more of our super back with a siphon mod of whatever your energy weapon is. On the gloves, I'm going to have a firepower so that when I get a grenade kill, it'll generate an orb, and a grenade kickstart so that when I throw my grenade, it will give me more energy based on how many stacks of armor charge I have. On the chestplate, I have 2 arc resistance mods and then 1 solar resistance since most of the damage in the lost sector will be arc. On the boots, there's going to be a recuperation so that when we pick up an orb, we get 70 HP. Orbs of Restoration, so that when we pick up an orb, it will give our ability with the least amount of cooldown a little bit of extra energy, and an Arc Weapon Surge. On the Bond, there's going to be a powerful attraction mod, so that when we pop our Rift, it will pick up all the mods in the area. This is the appearance for anybody that wants it. Alright, getting into the Lost Sector run. This first room, we're just going to be killing everything, so that we can get the Overload to spawn in. We will try to stun the overload with our melee since it does jolt targets. We can also have the grenade for that as well, but the grenade is a bit harder to land. If you have the arc orbs on, you can also throw the orb at the overload as the orb does also jolt targets. Once we defeat the overload, we need to kill everything in this room to open the door to the next room. There will be some exploding shanks in this hallway, so be careful. For this second room, we will need to defeat most of the enemies in here to get the barrier to spawn in. Once we kill the barrier, we're going to spend a little bit of time cleaning up the rest of the adds down here. If you ignore these adds, sometimes the next overload doesn't spawn in or is very delayed to spawn in. I'm going to stun the overload with my melee, but since it's only applying a jolt, we do have to hit it with something else to actually stun it. But that is okay. Once this overload is dead, there are a lot of snipers right here, so be careful while you're jumping across the gap. I like to take a couple of them out before I go. I'm going to get one of these snipers with this grenade, and then the next one I'll get with the salvo after I jump across. We do have quite a bit of Leviathan's Breath ammo left, so I'm going to use some to help with this barrier because he's in kind of a hard position. Just try to make sure your anti-barrier weapons are reloaded. I will have to waste a couple of Leviathan's Breath shots here, which will come back to bite me a little bit when I'm fighting the boss later on. Probably added about 30 seconds to my time. since I had to whittle away the last little bit of the boss's health with my Salvager Salvo instead of a heavy weapon. So the game plan for the boss room is just to sit in our rift right here while shooting at the boss. Once the boss is about a third HP, it will spawn in the barrier. We're going to shoot one Leviathan's Breath shot at the barrier to get it to pop its shield. Then we're going to pop our super on each of them. Now that I'm out of heavy ammo, I'm just going to whittle down the boss with Salvager Salvo as well as my grenades. Once you kill the boss, you're free to loot the chest. Happy farming today.